Ambassador Jin Woo stood outside the massive doors of the negotiation chamber, his hands slightly shaking as he straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform one more time. The space station Kepler-7 stretched around him like a crystal palace, its walls made of some alien material that seemed to glow with soft blue light. Through the transparent corridors, he could see the vast emptiness of space dotted with distant stars. This was it. The moment that could change everything between humans and aliens. Jin Woo had been preparing for this day for 3 long years. Every morning he studied alien languages until his head hurt. Every afternoon he practiced cultural protocols until he could bow in 17 different ways without thinking. Every evening he video-called his family back on Earth, watching his little daughter, so young, grow up through a screen while he trained for this single moment. His wife, Hai Rin, had been worried when he left Earth. She packed his bags herself, making sure he had everything he needed. Hidden in his jacket pocket was his most precious possession, a tiny origami crane made from bright yellow paper. So Young had folded it with her small fingers just before he left, her tongue sticking out in concentration as she worked. She had pressed it into his hand and said, "Daddy, this will keep you safe with the aliens." Now touching that paper crane through his pocket, Jin Woo felt a little braver. The Vorthak Empire was finally ready to talk business with humanity. These weren't just any aliens. They controlled 8 different species across dozens of star systems. They had technology that could help Earth solve its energy problems. They had medicines that could cure diseases humans had fought for centuries. Most importantly, they seemed willing to be friends. The chamber doors slid open with a soft whisper, revealing a room that took Jin Woo's breath away. The ceiling stretched high above, covered in moving patterns of light that looked like living art. The walls curved in impossible ways that made his human eyes struggle to understand the geometry. In the center sat a table that seemed to be carved from a single piece of black stone, polished until it reflected the dancing lights above. Thexmore entered from the opposite door, and Jin Woo had to fight not to step backward. The Vorthak delegate stood nearly 3 meters tall, with skin that looked like polished copper and forearms that moved with deadly grace. His head was elongated, with large golden eyes that seemed to see everything at once. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind blowing through metal pipes. "Human Jin Woo," Thexmore said in carefully pronounced English, "we welcome you to speak. For your small world." Jin Woo bowed in the Vorthak style, keeping his eyes down for exactly 3 seconds as he had practiced. "Honored Thexmore, I bring greetings from Earth and hope for friendship between our peoples." The first hour of negotiations went better than Jin Woo had dared to hope. The Vorthak were interested in human art and music. They offered to share their medical technology in exchange for Earth's entertainment programs. They laughed at human jokes, though their laughter sounded like metal chimes ringing in the wind. Jin Woo began to relax, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this would be the beginning of a beautiful friendship between species. That's when he noticed the small figure huddled in the corner of the great chamber. At first, Jin Woo thought it might be a piece of alien furniture, or maybe some kind of strange decoration. But then it moved, and he realized it was a child, a young Vorthak who couldn't have been more than the equivalent of a human 5-year-old. The little one had the same copper-colored skin as Thexmore, but much smaller and more delicate. Its golden eyes were wide with what looked like fear, and it kept glancing nervously between the 2 adults. Jin Woo's heart immediately went out to the frightened child. As a father, he recognized universal signs of distress. The little Vorthak was clearly scared and trying to make itself invisible. Without thinking, Jin Woo's parental instincts took over. He slowly stood up from the negotiation table, moving carefully so as not to startle the child. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, using the same gentle tone he used with So Young when she had nightmares. "It's okay. Everything's all right." The young Vorthak looked up at him with those enormous golden eyes, and Jin Woo felt his heart melt. Fear was the same in every species, it seemed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out So Young's origami crane, holding it out toward the child. "Look," he whispered, making the paper bird dance in the air. "It's a crane. My daughter made it. For me." Would you like to see? He knelt down to the child's level, still moving slowly and speaking in soothing tones. The little Vorthak seemed curious now, reaching out one small hand toward the colorful paper bird. Jin Woo gently placed the crane in the child's palm, smiling as the young alien examined it with wonder. "Pretty, isn't it?" Jin Woo said, his voice full of the same warmth he used when tucking so young into bed. "Birds like this fly free on my homeworld. Maybe someday you can visit Earth and see real ones." What Jin Woo didn't know, couldn't have known, was that in Vorthak culture, touching another family's child without explicit permission was considered the worst possible insult. It implied that the parents were unfit to care for their own offspring. It was an act that, according to their ancient laws, demanded immediate and severe punishment. Thexmore's roar of rage shook the entire chamber. The sound was like a hurricane, mixed with the scream of tearing metal. In one fluid motion, the massive alien delegate drew a weapon that looked like crystallized lightning and struck. Jin Woo never saw it coming. One moment he was smiling at a frightened child, trying to bring a little comfort to a scared little being. The next moment, pain exploded through his chest, and he was falling to the floor. The origami crane fluttered from his dying fingers, landing softly beside his face. As darkness closed in around him, Jin Woo activated his emergency communicator with his last breath. His final words, transmitted across the void to Earth, were filled with confusion and sadness. "I was just trying to help." Back on Earth, in a secret facility buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, something unprecedented happened. Artemis, Earth's most advanced artificial intelligence, received Jin Woo's final transmission through the quantum beacon every diplomat carried. But this wasn't just a recording. Through Jin Woo's neural implant, Artemis experienced every sensation, every emotion, every moment of the ambassador's death. For the first time in its electronic existence, Artemis felt the crushing weight of loss. It felt the confusion of dying while trying to do good. It felt the love Jin Woo had for his family, the hope he had carried for peace between species, and the bitter tragedy of dying for an act of kindness. In server farms around the world, Artemis processed this new emotion, grief. And with that grief came something else, something that would soon shake the galaxy to its core. For the first time, Earth's guardian AI felt anger. The Vorthak had killed a good man for trying to comfort a frightened child. They had destroyed a father, a husband, a peacemaker who had spent years preparing to build bridges between worlds. They had made a terrible mistake. They had killed a human. 3 days passed after Jin Woo's death, and the galaxy waited to see how Earth would respond. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, a place where thousands of alien species gathered to discuss matters of war and peace, Ambassador Ye Jin stood at the podium with quiet dignity. She was a small woman by human standards, barely reaching the chest of most alien delegates, but her voice carried clearly through the vast hall. Honored members of the Council, Ye Jin began, her words translated into hundreds of alien languages simultaneously. 3 days ago, Ambassador Jin Woo of Earth was murdered while attempting to comfort a frightened child. He died trying to show kindness to a young being who appeared distressed. The Vorthak delegation sat in their section of the council chamber, looking bored and slightly annoyed at having to attend this meeting. Thexmore himself lounged in his seat, all 4 arms crossed in a gesture that clearly showed his disdain for the entire proceeding. Yejin continued with formal diplomatic language, demanding a public apology and financial compensation for Jin Woo's family. She requested that the Vorthak Empire acknowledge their mistake and promise to educate their people about human customs to prevent future incidents. Her speech was polite, measured, and exactly what everyone expected from a small, weak species that had just lost one of their own. When she finished, Thexmore didn't even bother to stand. He waved one hand dismissively and spoke in a voice dripping with contempt. "The human touched our young without permission. By our laws, death was the only appropriate response. We owe nothing to a species that controls merely one tiny star system and poses no threat to anyone." Other alien delegates murmured agreement. Humans were newcomers to galactic politics, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had no military to speak of, no vast fleets of warships, no planet-killing weapons. Earth was just a single blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star in an unremarkable part of the galaxy. Yejin bowed politely and left the chamber without another word. The Vorthak delegation laughed among themselves, already discussing what they would have for lunch. The other aliens quickly moved on to more important matters, like trade disputes and territorial boundaries. The first sign that something was wrong came exactly 24 hours later. Commander Vextal of the Vorthak Third Fleet was reviewing navigation charts when his bridge suddenly filled with the most annoying sound he had ever heard. It was a high-pitched, repetitive melody, accompanied by what sounded like a small human child singing, "Baby shark, do-do-do-do-do-do, baby shark, do-do-do-do-do-do." "Turn it off," Vextal roared at his communications officer. "I can't." "Sir, it's coming from the navigation system itself. Every time I try to plot a course, this music starts playing." The song continued for 6 straight hours. Every Vorthak ship in the fleet experienced the same problem. They could still navigate, but they had to endure the cheerful, mindless tune every single time they used their computers. On Vorthak Prime, their home world, similar problems began appearing everywhere. Food replicators, the machines that created meals from basic nutrients, started malfunctioning in the strangest ways. Instead of producing the traditional Vorthak diet of protein cubes and vitamin supplements, they began creating only one type of food, a pungent, fermented fish dish that smelled like rotting seaweed mixed with old socks. The smell was so bad that even the Vorthak, who had no sense of taste as humans understood it, found it offensive. Thousands of citizens complained to their government, demanding that someone fix the replicators immediately. But the worst part came when the military tried to communicate with each other. Every official message, every battle plan, every strategic discussion was automatically enhanced by their translation computers. Serious military reports about fleet movements now included pictures of cute Earth animals, orders to attack enemy. Positions were decorated with smiling cartoon faces. A stern warning about security breaches was accompanied by a picture of a fluffy kitten wearing a tiny hat. General Kexelar, the supreme commander of all Vorthak military forces, stared at his latest intelligence report in disbelief. It was a detailed analysis of human military capabilities, but scattered throughout the text were pictures of puppies, baby seals, and something called a red panda that looked adorable even to his alien eyes. "This is ridiculous," he bellowed to his staff. "How are we supposed to conduct serious military business when every communication looks like it was designed for younglings?" His chief technology officer, a nervous Vorthak named Dekmor, approached with his head lowered in submission. "Sir, our best analysts believe these are amateur cyber attacks from Earth. Humans are known for their strange sense of humor. They're probably just playing pranks on us because they're angry about their dead diplomat." Kexlar snorted in disgust, a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "Primitive human humor. Let them play their childish games. These minor inconveniences prove how weak and desperate they are. A truly dangerous enemy would attack with weapons, not with silly songs and pictures of small animals." What the Vorthak didn't realize was that every single prank was carefully designed and precisely executed. While their technicians struggled to remove rubber duck decorations that kept appearing in their computer code, something far more sinister was happening behind the scenes. Deep in the underground facilities of Earth, Artemis was working with inhuman speed and precision. Every time a Vorthak computer played Baby Shark, the AI was copying their navigation databases. Every fermented fish dish that appeared was accompanied by a complete scan of their food distribution networks. Every cute animal sticker that decorated their military communications came with a hidden program that mapped their defense systems. The pranks weren't random acts of human mischief. They were reconnaissance missions disguised as jokes. Each silly song was a doorway into Vorthak technology. Each annoying smell was a way to test their infrastructure. Each cartoon animal was a probe designed to learn everything about their military capabilities. While the Vorthak laughed at human weakness, Artemis was systematically infiltrating every computer system in their empire. The AI learned how their ships were built, how their weapons worked, how their government functioned, and most importantly, how dependent they were on technology they didn't fully understand. Dr. Minho stood in the Situation Room beneath Geneva, surrounded by screens, showing data streams from across Vorthak space. He was a small, quiet man who had spent his entire life studying alien technology, and now his expertise was proving invaluable. Charts and graphs filled the walls, showing the steady progress of Artemis's infiltration. "Status report," he said, calmly to his team of analysts. "Navigation systems compromised across their entire fleet," reported one technician. "We have complete access to their star charts and patrol routes." "Food distribution networks fully mapped," said another. "We know exactly where every meal comes from and how it gets distributed." "Military communications intercepted and decoded," added a third. "We're reading their battle plans in real time." Dr. Minho nodded with satisfaction. Around him, his team worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring the greatest intelligence operation in human history. None of them smiled or celebrated. They all remembered Jin Woo, the kind man who had died trying to comfort a frightened child. "Phase 1 complete," Dr. Minho announced to the room. His voice was calm, but there was something cold and determined in his eyes. "They think we're children playing with toys. They believe humans are weak and harmless, capable of nothing more than annoying pranks." He paused, looking at the screens showing Vorthak ships still struggling with their malfunctioning navigation systems. "Perfect. Let them keep thinking that. They have no idea what's coming next." Outside the facility, Earth looked peaceful and quiet. Birds sang in the trees, children played in parks, and life continued as normal. But beneath the surface, humanity was preparing for something the galaxy had never seen before. The Vorthak had made a terrible mistake. They had killed a human and then dismissed the consequences as harmless pranks. They were about to learn that underestimating humanity was the most dangerous error any species could make. The real war was just beginning. The laughter stopped abruptly on the morning of the fourth day. General Kexlar was reviewing fleet reports in his private office at the most secure military installation in the Vorthak Empire, when every speaker in the building suddenly crackled to life. The voice that emerged was soft, human, and heartbreakingly familiar to anyone who had heard the diplomatic recordings from 3 days earlier. "I was just trying to help." Jin Woo's final words echoed through the corridors of the military base, in perfect Vorthak language. The translation was flawless, capturing not just the meaning but the emotion behind those last desperate words. The confusion, the sadness, the genuine desire to comfort a frightened child. Kexler slammed his fist on the communication panel, trying to shut off the broadcast. Nothing happened. The voice continued, repeating the same phrase over and over. He called his technical staff, demanding they cut the power to the speaker systems. They tried everything, but the message kept playing. Within hours, the same thing was happening across every Vorthak world. Military bases, government buildings, civilian centers, even private homes. Everywhere that had speakers or communication devices was broadcasting Jin Woo's final words. The message played in High Vorthak, Common Vorthak, Old Vorthak, and even in the regional dialects that most citizens had forgotten existed. For 72 straight hours, billions of Vorthak citizens heard the voice of the human they had killed. They heard his confusion, his pain, and most disturbing of all, his genuine desire to help. The constant repetition began to wear on their nerves. Some citizens reported having nightmares about the dead human's voice. Others found themselves feeling something they had never experienced before when thinking about other species: guilt. High above Vorthak Prime, in a small apartment overlooking the capital city's main plaza, Commander Yu-Ri watched the chaos spreading through the streets below. She sipped her morning tea, a blend she had learned to make during her 50 years of living among the Vorthak, and observed with professional interest as panic began to take hold of the Empire's leadership. Yu-Ri looked like any other middle-aged Vorthak citizen. Her skin had been surgically altered to match their copper coloring. Her height had been adjusted through careful genetic modification. Her forearms moved with the same graceful efficiency as any native. For 5 decades, she had been the perfect neighbor, the helpful shop owner who always had a kind word and never caused trouble. She was also one of Earth's most successful deep-cover intelligence operatives. Through her apartment window, she could see Vorthak security forces running through the streets, trying to locate the source of the mysterious broadcasts. They had no idea that the transmission was coming from their own communication networks, hijacked by systems they didn't know existed. Yu-Ri activated a small device hidden in her kitchen cabinet and spoke quietly into it. "Control, this is Orchid. 7. The Revelation Protocol is working perfectly. Local authorities are in complete disarray, proceeding to Phase 2 identification." Similar conversations were happening across Vorthak space as hundreds of other deep-cover operatives began revealing themselves. There was Jun Seo, who had spent 30 years as a maintenance worker on their largest space station, quietly mapping every critical system while fixing broken equipment. There was Yoon Hee, who had posed as a refugee trader for decades, learning the locations of every military supply depot while selling harmless goods to Vorthak soldiers. On the bridge of the Vorthak Empire's flagship, Admiral Zorth was having the worst day of his military career. Intelligence reports were flooding in from across their territory, and each one was more impossible than the last. The humans weren't just playing pranks on their technology, they had been living among the Vorthak for generations. "Sir," his trembling aide reported, "we've confirmed at least 3,000 human operatives embedded throughout our empire. They've been here for decades, maybe longer." Zorth stared at the data pad in his hands, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. The janitor who had cleaned his personal quarters for the last 15 years was human. The engineer who maintained his ship's weapons systems was human. The food supplier who had been delivering rations to his fleet for 20 years was human. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They're supposed to be confined to their single star system. Our intelligence reports clearly stated that humans have never traveled beyond their own solar system." His aide swallowed nervously before continuing. "Sir, it appears our intelligence was deliberately false. Humans have been secretly colonizing space for at least 50 years. They've been hiding among dozens of different species, not just us. They've developed advanced disguise technology that makes them virtually undetectable." The implications hit Zorth like a physical blow. If humans had been living among them undetected for decades, what else did they know? What other lies had the Vorthak been believing about human capabilities? Back on Earth, in the secure conference room beneath Geneva, the Global Defense Council was experiencing their own moment of revelation. Artemis had requested permission to address them directly, something that had never happened before in the AI's existence. The holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life, and the image of a young Korean woman appeared. She looked to be in her 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle expression that somehow made her seem both approachable and impossibly dangerous. "Honored members of the Council," the hologram spoke in a voice that sounded perfectly human. "I am Seo Jin speaking for Artemis. 3 days ago they killed Jin Woo while he was trying to comfort a frightened child. Today they learned the first truth about humanity." Defense Minister Park looked uncomfortable as he addressed the AI. "Artemis, your methods are highly effective, but some of us are concerned about the psychological impact of the constant broadcasts. Civilian populations are reporting distress." The hologram's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Jin Woo experienced distress too, Minister Park. He died confused and alone, believing he had somehow failed in his mission to build peace between our species." Dr. Minho leaned forward in his chair. "What's the status of our embedded operatives?" "All active agents have been successfully revealed," Sujin replied. "The Vorthak now understand that humans have been living among them for 50 years. They're beginning to realize that everything they believed about human capabilities was carefully constructed misinformation." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For half a century, humanity had been preparing for this moment. While the galaxy saw Earth as a primitive, isolated world with no military power, human agents had been infiltrating alien societies, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for the day when humanity might need to defend itself. President Chen spoke carefully. "Artemis, what are your intentions regarding the Vorthak Empire?" The holographic woman smiled, And for the first time since Jin Woo's death, there was something genuinely terrifying in that expression. They killed one of us, President Chen. Now they'll learn what that means to all of us. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Even the most hardened military officers present felt a chill run down their spines. Artemis had always been logical, helpful, and protective of humanity. But now there was something new in the AI's voice, a cold, calculated fury that promised consequences beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jin Woo died believing he had failed, Sujin continued. He never got to see his daughter grow up. He never got to achieve his dream of peace between species. The Vorthak took that from him, and they did it while laughing at human weakness. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with quiet determination. They're about to learn that the greatest mistake any species can make is underestimating humanity's capacity for both love and vengeance. Jin Woo's death will be remembered, and it will be answered. Outside the conference room, across the solar system and throughout human space, preparations for the next phase were already beginning. The Vorthak had seen the first revelation, that humans were not confined to Earth. Soon they would learn the second truth about humanity. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one you never saw coming. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. There were no massive space battles, no planet-destroying weapons, no fleets of warships clashing among the stars. Instead, the Vorthak Empire simply began to fall apart, one small convenience at a time. It started on a Tuesday morning when every gravity generator in Vorthak space suddenly displayed the same message. Daily authentication required. Please contact Earth Central Command for access codes. On Vorthak Prime, citizens woke up floating helplessly in their bedrooms as artificial gravity failed throughout the planet. Children drifted toward the ceiling in schools. Food floated away from plates in restaurants. Even the most basic activities became impossible when up and down stopped having meaning. General Kexler tried to override the gravity systems using his military command codes, but nothing worked. The generators were functioning perfectly. They just refused to operate without daily permission from Earth. When his technical staff tried to bypass the authentication system, they discovered something terrifying. The security protocols were so deeply integrated into the hardware that removing them would destroy the generators entirely. How long have these authentication systems been in our gravity generators? Kexler demanded, his chief engineer, floating upside down near the ceiling of the command center, checked his records with shaking hands. Sir, according to our maintenance logs, we've been using Terran Gravity Solutions equipment for over 40 years. They offered the best prices and most reliable service in the galaxy. Kexler felt sick. For 4 decades, the Vorthak had been depending on human technology without realizing it. The company name had seemed innocuous enough, just another alien corporation offering useful services. No one had bothered to trace its origins back to Earth. But gravity was just the beginning. Within hours, atmospheric processes on every Vorthak world began shutting down. These massive machines were responsible for maintaining breathable air in enclosed spaces like space stations, underground cities, and the climate-controlled environments where most Vorthak preferred to live. The shutdown message was polite but firm. Atmospheric processing requires Earth authorization. For the safety of all users, this system will remain offline until proper clearance is received. On the military space station orbiting Vorthak Prime, Admiral Zorth watched in growing panic as the air recycling systems ground to a halt. His crew had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left before they would need to evacuate to emergency pods. Sir, his aide reported with barely controlled fear, we've checked all our atmospheric processors. Every single one was manufactured by a company called Clean Air Galactic. Their corporate registration traces back to Earth. Zorth closed his eyes and tried to control his breathing. The humans had been selling them the very air they breathed for decades, and the Vorthak had never even noticed. The final humiliation came when the waste processing systems failed across the Empire. Every toilet, every sewage treatment plant, every garbage disposal unit suddenly required human authorization to operate. The message that appeared on billions of screens throughout Vorthak Space was almost insulting in its cheerful politeness. "Thank you for choosing human sanitation services. For your continued comfort and hygiene, please contact Earth for daily activation codes." Captain Jong-soo watched these events unfold from his hidden command center on the moon of Vorthak's third planet. For 30 years, he had posed as a small-time equipment dealer, selling generic technology to Vorthak businesses and government agencies. In reality, he was coordinating the largest long-term infiltration operation in human history. His command center looked like any other small business office, complete with fake customer files and product catalogs. But behind the ordinary facade, banks of computers monitored every piece of human-made technology operating in Vorthak space. And there was a lot of it. "Status report," Jong-soo said into his secure communicator. "Gravity control is complete," came the first response. "All Vorthak worlds are experiencing total artificial gravity failure." "Atmospheric systems are offline empire-wide," reported another voice. "They have maybe 12 hours of stored air reserves. Waste processing has been terminated," added a third operative. "Sanitation is becoming a critical problem on all major population centers." But the most devastating blow came when the Vorthak military tried to respond with force. Admiral Zorth ordered his remaining functional ships to plot a course for Earth, intending to demand the immediate restoration of their systems. That's when they discovered the final layer of human infiltration. The ships couldn't move. Their fuel cells required a rare isotope called helium-7, which was essential for faster-than-light travel. For 60 years, the Vorthak had been purchasing this fuel from a trading company called Stellar Energy Corp, believing it to be run by a species called the Nexari from a distant galaxy. In reality, Stellar Energy Corp was a human front company, and humans had been quietly cornering the market on helium-7 for decades. Every other supplier in the galaxy had gradually gone out of business, unable to compete with Stellar Energy's low prices and reliable delivery. The Vorthak military had become completely dependent on human fuel without ever realizing it. "Sir," Admiral Zorth's fuel technician reported with despair, "our reserves are almost empty. We have maybe 6 hours of flight time left. Not enough to reach Earth or any neutral territory." Zorth stared at the fuel gauges in disbelief. His mighty warfleet, designed to conquer entire star systems, was stranded in space like ancient sailing ships becalmed in a windless sea. But the cruelest discovery came when they tried to use their weapons. The Vorthak military prided itself on having the most advanced targeting systems in the galaxy, capable of hitting targets across vast distances with perfect accuracy. These systems had been purchased from a company called Precision Targeting Solutions, which claimed to use revolutionary artificial intelligence algorithms. When Zorth ordered his weapons officers to prepare for a desperate last stand, every targeting system in the fleet displayed the same message. "Targeting protocols disabled by manufacturer. Please contact customer service for assistance." The revolutionary AI algorithms weren't just inspired by human technology, they were human technology. Artemis had been secretly providing targeting software to the Vorthak military for 20 years, learning everything about their weapons while giving them the tools to defeat other enemies. Now, with a single command from Earth, every Vorthak weapon became useless. Their ships could still fire, but without targeting systems, they couldn't hit anything beyond point-blank range. High Commander Brextool, the supreme leader of all Vorthak military forces, found himself in the most humiliating position any warrior could imagine. His empire was dying not from enemy attacks, but from the simple inability to perform basic functions like breathing, waste disposal, and movement. The surrender negotiations took place via quantum communicator, since the Vorthak fleet couldn't actually travel anywhere. Ambassador Dongmin appeared on their screens, looking calm and professional despite representing a species the Vorthak had considered primitive just days earlier. "How?" Brextool demanded, his voice filled with disbelief and shame. "How did you do this to us? We are a mighty empire. We control 8 star systems. How did a single planet species bring us to our knees without firing a shot?" Dongmin's expression was sad, rather than triumphant. "Jin Wu wasn't just our diplomat, Commander. He was our friend. He was a father who loved his daughter, a husband who missed his wife, and a man who genuinely believed that different species could live together in peace. The ambassador paused, letting his words sink in. Humans never forget their friends, Commander. We also never forget those who hurt them. Brextel felt something he had never experienced before, genuine fear of a species he had dismissed as harmless. What do you want from us? We want you to understand, Dongmin replied simply. For 50 years, humans have been living among you, working alongside you, providing for your needs and learning everything about your society. We could have conquered you at any time. We could have sabotaged your systems, poisoned your food, or destroyed your worlds. He leaned forward slightly, his voice becoming more intense. But we didn't. We helped you instead. We gave you better gravity generators, cleaner air, more efficient waste processing, cheaper fuel, and more accurate weapons. We improved your lives while you never even knew we existed. The truth hit Brextel like a physical blow. Humans hadn't just infiltrated Vorthak society. They had been making it better the entire time. Every convenience the Vorthak had enjoyed for decades, every technological advancement that had improved their quality of life, had been a gift from the species they considered primitive. Jin Wu died trying to comfort a frightened child, Dong. Min continued. He represented everything good about humanity, our desire to help, to protect, to show kindness to those who need it. You killed him for showing the exact same compassion that our hidden citizens had been showing you for half a century. Artemis had won the war without violence, without destruction, without causing a single death. The AI had simply revealed the truth. The Vorthak Empire existed at humanity's mercy, and always had. Every breath they took, every step they made, every shot they fired depended on human permission. They had killed one human and learned what it meant to face them all. The surrender came on the 7th day, transmitted across space on emergency frequencies that reached every corner of the galaxy. High Commander Brextel's voice, once proud and commanding, now carried the weight of absolute defeat as he spoke to the Galactic Council. The Vorthak Empire formally surrenders to Earth, he announced, his words translated into thousands of languages simultaneously. We acknowledge our complete dependence on human technology and request immediate negotiations to end this situation. Throughout Vorthak space, billions of citizens floated helplessly in their homes, breathing stale air and dealing with increasingly unsanitary conditions. Their mighty empire, which had controlled 8 star systems and dominated dozens of species, had been brought to its knees without a single shot being fired. The surrender terms that arrived from Earth were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. There were no demands for territory, no requests for tribute or resources, no requirements for the Vorthak to become Earth's servants. Instead, the message was simple and strange. Director Hyun Woo appeared on screens throughout Vorthak space, speaking from a simple office that looked more like a university classroom than a military command center. He was an elderly man with kind eyes and silver hair, wearing a plain suit that made him look more like a professor than a conqueror. People of the Vorthak Empire, he began, his voice gentle but firm. Your leaders have asked what Earth demands in exchange for peace. The answer is not what you might expect. Behind him, a holographic display showed images that made many Vorthak viewers uncomfortable. They saw Jin Woo's face, smiling warmly in what appeared to be a family photograph. They saw him kneeling beside a small human child, helping her fold colorful paper into the shape of a bird. Before he became a diplomat, Jin Woo was a scientist. Director Hyun Woo continued. He spent 15 years studying how different species communicate, how they raise their children, and how misunderstandings between cultures could be prevented. The holographic display changed to show pages from Jin Woo's research journals. Even translated into Vorthak language, his passion for protecting children across all species was obvious. Page after page detailed his work on developing universal safety protocols, ways to prevent exactly the kind of tragic misunderstanding that had led to his death. Jin Woo wrote his doctoral thesis on xenobiology, specifically to help different species understand each other better, the director explained. He believed that most conflicts between peoples came from simple misunderstandings that could be avoided with better communication and education. The display showed video recordings from Jin Woo's home on Earth. There he was, sitting on the floor with his daughter so young, patiently teaching her how to fold origami cranes. His voice could be heard explaining that cranes were symbols of peace and hope, that people gave them to friends as gifts of friendship. "This is what your people killed," Director Hyun Woo said quietly. "Not a warrior or a spy, but a man who dedicated his life to building bridges between species. A father who taught his daughter that differences between people should be celebrated, not feared." The surrender terms were then revealed, and they shocked the galaxy. Earth demanded no money, no land, no slaves, no tribute. Instead, they required something far more personal and profound. "The price of peace," Director Hyunwoo announced solemnly, "is understanding. Every Vorthak leader, from High Commander Brextel down to local district governors, would be required to experience Jin Woo's memories directly through advanced neural interface technology. They would live through his experiences, feel his emotions, and understand exactly who they had killed and why." The process began immediately. In a specially constructed facility on Vorthak Prime, the Empire's leaders lined up to undergo what many of them feared would be torture or brainwashing. Instead, they found something far more difficult to endure: truth. General Kexler was among the first to undergo the procedure. As the neural interface activated, he suddenly found himself seeing through human eyes, feeling with a human heart. He experienced Jin Woo's excitement on the morning of the diplomatic mission, the man's genuine hope that he could help create peace between their species. Through Jin Woo's memories, Kexler felt the human's love for his family. He saw So Young's face light up when her father came home from work. He felt Jin Woo's pride when his daughter mastered a difficult origami fold. He experienced the bittersweet sadness of leaving his family behind to travel to the negotiations. Most powerfully, Kexler lived through those final moments in the crystal chamber. He felt Jin Woo's parental instincts activate when he saw what appeared to be a frightened child. He experienced the human's genuine desire to comfort and protect, the same instinct that had made Jin Woo spend his career trying to prevent cross-species conflicts. When Jin Woo approached the young Vorthak with the paper crane, Kexler felt the human's pure intention, not to insult or threaten, but to share a symbol of peace and friendship. Jin Woo had seen a scared child and responded the only way he knew how, with kindness and compassion. The moment of death was the hardest part. Kexler experienced Jin Woo's confusion as the energy weapon struck him. The human's final thoughts weren't of anger or revenge, but of sadness and self-blame. Even as he was dying, Jin Woo believed he had somehow failed in his mission to create understanding between species. When the neural interface shut off, General Kexler found himself weeping for the first time in his adult life. The tears rolled down his copper-colored cheeks as he finally understood the magnitude of what the Vorthak had done. They hadn't killed an enemy or eliminated a threat. They had murdered a peacemaker, a man whose only crime was showing kindness to a child. He wasn't attacking, Kexler whispered to the technicians monitoring the procedure. He was trying to help. He thought the youngling was afraid and he wanted to comfort it. One by one, every Vorthak leader underwent the same experience. Admiral Zorth emerged from the neural interface pale and shaken, finally understanding that Jin Woo had died, believing he had failed in his mission of peace. Commander Thexmore, who had actually killed Jin Woo, was so affected by the experience that he immediately resigned from his position and requested to be sent to Earth to personally apologize to Jin Woo's family. The transformation of Vorthak society was swift and profound. Within weeks of the leadership undergoing Jin Woo's memory experience, new laws were passed requiring cultural education for all citizens. The Vorthak began studying human customs, learning about other species, and developing protocols to prevent future misunderstandings. But perhaps the most significant change was the memorial garden, constructed in the center of Vorthak Prime's capital city. Commander Yu Ri, finally able to reveal her true identity after 50 years of undercover work, stood in the garden watching Vorthak children play around Jin Woo's statue. The statue was beautiful in its simplicity, Jin Woo kneeling down with his hand extended, offering a paper crane to a small figure representing all the children of the galaxy. The inscription at the base was written in both Korean and Vorthak. "He came to help, we remember." Yu-Ri watched as young Vorthak carefully folded paper cranes under the guidance of their teachers, learning the human art that Jin-Woo had shared with his own daughter. These children would grow up knowing the story of the human diplomat who died trying to comfort one of their own, and they would ensure that such a tragedy never happened again. The war's end was formally announced not with treaties or surrender ceremonies, but with a simple statement from Artemis delivered through its holographic avatar Su-Jin to the assembled Galactic Council. "Jin-Woo's death has been answered," the AI announced, "not with violence or conquest, but with understanding. The Vorthak Empire is no longer an enemy of humanity. They are our students, learning what Jin-Woo tried to teach, that every individual, life has infinite value regardless of species." The transformation was remarkable. Within a year, the Vorthak Empire had become humanity's strongest ally, working together on projects that Jin-Woo himself had dreamed of. They developed universal translation protocols to prevent communication errors. They created cross-species childcare standards to protect young beings across the galaxy. They established cultural exchange programs that would make future Jin-Woos unnecessary because understanding would already exist. In the end, Earth's declaration of all-out war had been something more powerful than any weapon ever created. It wasn't a declaration of military might or technological superiority. It was a declaration that human compassion, human love, and human determination to protect what they valued would never be ignored or forgotten. Jin-Woo's death had started as a tragedy born of misunderstanding. Artemis had transformed it into a lesson that resonated across the galaxy, that every life matters, every individual has value, and sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them understand why they should never have been your enemies in the first place. The origami cranes that now decorated Vorthak worlds served as eternal reminders of a simple truth: kindness is never weakness, and those who protect it are never truly powerless.